Right now, somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean, a commercial aircraft is cruising at 39,000 feet. You cannot see the water below. The darkness outside the window is absolute. The engines are a low, steady hum. Everything feels safe. Everything feels routine. But on the night of August 23, 2001, 306 people boarded a flight that felt exactly like that and found themselves in the most terrifying powerless glide in the history of commercial aviation. No fuel, no engines, no second chances. Just a dead aircraft, 2 pilots, an ink-black ocean below, and 75 miles of silence between them and the ground. This is the true story of Air Transat Flight 236, and it begins not at the airport, but with a wrench, a wrong part, and a decision no one noticed until it was almost too late. It is the middle of the night at Air Transat's maintenance base at Mirabel Airport, just north of Montreal. The hangar smells of hydraulic fluid and jet fuel. Fluorescent lights hum overhead. The aircraft, registration CGITS, a 2-year-old Airbus A330-243, sits in the bay, its right engine opened up for routine maintenance. The job is straightforward. A hydraulic pump on the right engine needs replacing. Technicians have done jobs like this dozens of times. Nobody expects anything to go wrong. But here is where the story truly begins. Not in the cockpit, not over the ocean, but right here in this hangar with a single incorrect part. When the new hydraulic pump is installed, the maintenance crew faces a problem. The post-modification fuel line and the pre-modification hydraulic tube don't quite fit together the way they should. Instead of sourcing every replacement component listed in the service bulletin, a mandatory procedure, the technicians substitute what they have on hand. They use an older hydraulic tube, a pre-service bulletin component, because it appears to fit alongside the newer fuel line. Appears to fit. That phrase will haunt this story. What the technicians don't know, what nobody at that workbench that night understands, is that flexible hydraulic tubes, when pressurized, expand and move. Under pressure, this particular tube will press down directly onto the fuel line beside it. The chafing will be invisible from the outside. It will happen slowly, in the dark, high above the Atlantic Ocean, 4 hours into a flight, while 293 passengers sleep in their seats. And here's the detail that makes your stomach drop. Air Transat's quality control department only worked Monday through Friday. The maintenance was completed on a weekend. Not a single quality control inspector ever reviewed the installation. One wrong tube. No weekend oversight. That is the entire chain that begins this catastrophe. 4 days later, the crew of Flight 236 reports for duty. They have no idea what is waiting. The man walking to the aircraft tonight is not your typical commercial airline captain. Robert Pichet is 48 years old, built like a lumberjack, raised on Quebec's wild Gaspé Peninsula, and he learned to fly not in a classroom, but over the forests and frozen lakes of northern Canada as a bush pilot. His resume is, to put it gently, unconventional. In the late 1970s, after being laid off from regional carrier Quebec Air, Pichet turned to the only flying work he could find, smuggling marijuana. In November 1983, his plane landed at a small airfield in the state of Georgia, packed with cannabis flown up from Jamaica. He was arrested. He served 16 months of a 5-year sentence in a U.S. federal prison. He was released in 1985 and pardoned in 2000, just 1 year before this flight. Air Transat hired him in 1995 when he was 43. By 2001, he has 16,800 total flight hours. He has 796 of them on the Airbus A330. He is, by any professional measure, a highly experienced captain. But there is one thing about Robert Pichet that will matter more than anything else before this night is over. He is also an experienced glider pilot. He has flown unpowered aircraft. He understands in his bones how to manage altitude and speed without an engine. Almost no commercial airline captain alive has that combination of skills. Tonight, he doesn't know he will need them. Beside him sits First Officer Dirk de Jager, 28 years old, 4,800 flight hours, calm and professional. The aircraft has 293 passengers on board. Most of them are Canadian tourists heading to Europe or Portuguese expats going home to visit family. Among them, a couple on their honeymoon, parents with young children, people who saved for months to afford this trip. At 8:52 p.m. Eastern Time, 0052 UTC, CGITS pushes back from the gate. The Airbus A330 lifts off from Toronto and points its nose toward Lisbon. The Atlantic Ocean stretches ahead, 5,600 kilometers of open water. The flight will take approximately 7 hours. Everything is normal. For exactly 4 hours, you are in the cockpit of Air Transat Flight 236. The aircraft is in cruise. The autopilot holds a steady heading of 230 degrees magnetic toward Lisbon. Below, the Atlantic Ocean is black and invisible. The engines are a constant, reassuring roar. The instrument panels glow green and amber in the darkness. Then, a warning light flickers. At 4:38 a.m. UTC, the hydraulic system on the right engine begins showing abnormal readings. The right engine's hydraulic fluid pressure is fluctuating. The crew examines the warning, contacts Air Transat's Maintenance Control Center in Montreal, and Captain Pichet makes a reasonable, experienced decision. The warnings are likely false. The instruments on fly-by-wire aircraft can produce misleading data. Montreal agrees. Monitor the situation. This is not incompetence. This is a reasonable interpretation of ambiguous information. The real problem, the fact that a hydraulic tube is grinding against a fuel line 39,000 feet below the cabin ceiling, is completely invisible from the cockpit. But the fuel is going somewhere, and the numbers are changing. At 5:11 a.m. UTC, the crew notices something else. The trim tank, a fuel reservoir in the aircraft's tail, is transferring fuel forward earlier than it should. The fuel on board reading is dropping faster than expected. The estimated fuel at destination is declining. These are indirect, subtle signs, not alarming on their own, not yet. Here is the counterintuitive fact that makes this story even chilling. The Airbus A330's computerized fuel system actually worsens the situation. In an attempt to balance the fuel load between the two wing tanks, because the right wing tank is mysteriously losing fuel, the system automatically begins drawing from the left tank to compensate. The very systems designed to keep the aircraft safe are, without knowing it, accelerating the drain. By 5:33 a.m., 19 straight minutes of continuous trim tank transfer messages have appeared on the flight deck. At 5:45 a.m., Captain Pichet makes the critical decision to divert, not to Lisbon, to the Azores, a chain of Portuguese islands rising from the mid-Atlantic, the closest land. The nearest airport is Lajes Air Base on Terceira Island. It is 150 nautical miles away. At 6:13 a.m. UTC, while still 150 nautical miles from Lajes, still at 39,000 feet, engine number 2 goes silent. It doesn't sputter. It doesn't choke. The fuel starvation is complete. The right engine simply stops. Pichet initiates a descent. He has one engine left. He has 150 miles to go. He has no idea how much fuel remains in the left tank. 13 minutes later, at 6:26 a.m., engine number 1 flames out. Both engines are gone. CIGITS is now a 233-ton glider. You were sitting in seat 32C. You felt the first engine go, the hum changed. People looked up from their pillows and their novels and their in-flight films. Some noticed, some didn't. Then, at 6:26 a.m., the second engine dies, and the aircraft goes quiet in a way that commercial aircraft are never, ever quiet. No thrust, no roar, just wind. The creak of the fuselage, the soft sound of 293 people beginning to understand that something is profoundly wrong. 5 minutes later, at 6:31 a.m., the oxygen masks drop from the ceiling. Now they know. In the cockpit, Pichet and de Jager are fighting an aircraft that has suddenly lost most of its systems. When both engines failed, the main electrical power died. The hydraulic systems that control the flaps, the alternate brakes, and the spoilers, all of them gone. What they have is the RAT, the ram air turbine, a small propeller that deploys automatically into the slipstream and generates just enough power to keep the critical instruments alive. They have limited braking, limited spoilers, limited everything. What they also have is altitude, and Pichet knows exactly how to use it. The Airbus A330 has a glide ratio of approximately 17:1 in clean configuration. That means for every foot it descends, it travels 17 feet forward. At 39,000 feet, with 65 nautical miles to the runway, the math is terrifyingly close. If the aircraft is too heavy, it falls too fast. If they arrive too high, they overshoot and ditch in the ocean. If they arrive too low, there is no second approach. They have exactly one chance. Pichet later described his mental state. When I tell people that I was scared, they don't want to believe me. They think I'm saying that out of modesty. In the cabin, flight attendants move through the aisle with quiet, extraordinary professionalism. They instruct passengers to brace positions, They help people with life vests. Children are crying. Adults are calling out. Some passengers are praying aloud. The smell in the cabin is sharp. The cold metallic edge of fear. The recycled air of a pressurizing aircraft in rapid descent. The plane is dropping at 2,000 feet per minute. The crew and controllers at Lajes calculate they have 15 to 20 minutes before they either reach the runway or run out of altitude over open water. Ditching in the Atlantic Ocean at night is not a survivable option. The swells are massive. The fuselage would likely break apart on impact. Hundreds of people in dark, cold water. The survival rate would be near zero. Then, through the cockpit windscreen, in the distance, lights. Lajes Air Base. Pichet can see it, and he is coming in too high. He executes a full 360-degree orbit, an enormous circle cut through the night sky with no engines to bleed altitude. Then, a series of tight S-turns, snaking the aircraft back and forth to lose more height without losing forward progress. At 6:45 a.m. UTC, the wheels of CGITS touch the runway at approximately 200 knots, nearly 40 knots faster than a normal landing speed. The nose slams down. The aircraft bounces, lands again. Maximum emergency braking is applied. 8 of the 10 main landing gear tires explode. The wheel rims grind against the runway surface, throwing sparks in the dark. The aircraft travels 2,300 meters down a 3,000-meter runway before coming to a full stop. 306 people, 75 miles without engines, 19 minutes of silent glide over the Atlantic Ocean, all alive. The emergency slides deploy. People tumble onto the tarmac in their socks and their travel clothes, disoriented, shaking, some laughing, some sobbing. 14 passengers and 2 crew members have minor injuries from the evacuation. 2 passengers have serious injuries. By some miracle that defies the physics of what just happened, no one is dead. In the first hours, the world gets the headline, "Miracle Landing, Hero Pilots." 306 lives saved. Robert Pichet becomes a national icon overnight. Quebec's National Assembly gives him a Medal of Honor in November 2001. The Airline Pilots Association calls it the greatest feat of the last 50 years in civilian piloting. The media compares it, years before the phrase exists, to what will later be called the miracle on the Hudson. And then the investigation begins, and the full picture emerges. The primary cause, the wrong hydraulic tube installed during weekend maintenance at Mirabel, with no quality control inspector present. A flexible tube that pressed against a fuel line under pressure, chafed through it, and created a catastrophic fuel leak 39,000 feet over the Atlantic Ocean. But investigators also find something else. Pichet and Deger missed multiple opportunities to identify the fuel leak earlier. The cockpit voice recorder reveals the crew did not use the standard procedural checklist when addressing the fuel imbalance between the tanks. Had they followed procedure precisely, they might have caught the situation sooner, with more fuel remaining and more options available. Both pilots are assigned partial responsibility. The heroes of the Azores become, in the cold language of aviation investigation, contributing factors in their own emergency. It is one of the most painful paradoxes of this story. The man who saved 306 lives also made decisions that put those lives at greater risk. Pichet himself never flinched from that duality. When a reporter asked if he considered himself a hero, he said, "I don't consider myself a hero, sir. I could have done without this." The survivors carry their own complicated legacy. Some walked off that tarmac and back into their lives without missing a step. Others were not so fortunate. Brain imaging studies conducted 9 years after the flight found that 8 surviving passengers showed heightened neurological activity in trauma-related regions of the brain, areas that lit up at the mere mention of the flight, of the silence, of those oxygen masks falling. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget. CGITS was repaired and returned to service 4 months later. The same aircraft, still flying. It was retired from air Transat service in March 2020. It now sits in storage with the leasing company AirCap, somewhere between its past and its future. Robert Pichet flew commercially until 2017. His last flight for Air Transat was a fundraiser for his foundation, one dedicated to helping people overcome drug and alcohol addiction. The man who went to prison for drug smuggling spent his final years in the sky raising money to help others escape the same darkness he once lived in. There is a reason this story still matters more than 2 decades after those wheels hit the tarmac at Lajes. It is not just about a dramatic landing. It is about how catastrophe is almost never a single event. It is a chain, a weekend shift, a missing part, a confusing warning light, a wrong decision held a few minutes too long. Each link ordinary, each link survivable alone, but together they build something that can only be solved by a man who once flew airplanes for drug lords and learned in a prison cell and in the sky above the Gaspé wilderness how to stay calm when everything goes wrong. 306 people went home to their lives because of a bush pilot from Quebec with a criminal record and a gift for silent, engineless flight. Aviation got safer because of the maintenance protocols that were rewritten, the checklists that were reinforced, the warning systems that were sharpened in the years after this flight. And somewhere in the Azores, on Terceira Island, the runway at Lajes Air Base still carries the faint ghost of burned rubber, 8 tire marks carved into the asphalt by a plane that had no business landing there on a morning that had no business ending the way it did. If this story moved you, if you felt even a fraction of what those 306 people felt in those 19 minutes of silence, subscribe. Drop a comment below telling me what part of this story shocked you most, because history is full of moments like this. Ordinary decisions, extraordinary consequences, and the rare, impossible human beings who hold everything together at the very last second. I'll see you in the next one.